Hi everybody, this is Lieutenant Colonel Eddie Stamper with Joint Base San Antonio and the San Antonio-Electromagnetic Defense. As you've probably picked up, we're starting a little bit late. We had a technical glitch with YouTube that we've been able to solve. We are going to stay on the same schedule and try to make up some time in the middle. So without any further delay, I want to introduce Brigadier General Laura Linderman, the commander of Joint Base San Antonio, for her opening comments, and we are just so grateful to her for everything she's done for this organization and for this movement and for this project. And we've got a lot of good news to share. So, General Linderman.
Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Laura Linderman from Joint Base San Antonio. For everyone online and out there joining us today, we're extremely grateful. We apologize for the slight delay, but thank you for joining us on our quarterly, a little bit late due to the recent events that we're all facing together. But we do want to bring together this important group because we've got a lot of exciting news to share. First, I want to thank UTSA for hosting us today. Dr. Amy, thank you very, very much. You've been a tremendous partner, leader in this community, beautiful campus and beautiful just building and here in the center, Guy. Thank you for your leadership. It's been a great opportunity to partner with you as we've stood up this particular initiative, but also as you're going forward with your initiatives here on the campus. There's a wonderful group of people here in the room and all the leadership here that's been displayed over the last, almost 2 years that we've been working on this together and how it's grown. And so Colonel Stamper, the team, Colonel Lovell, you all have been true leaders in the field, and your work has paid off. There's some neat announcements that we're about ready to talk about, but we've been selected as a national pilot test by the state of Texas and multiple federal partners. We're excited about that. And we also wanted to thank Mr. Jim Platt. I think he's here virtually. He's from the Department of Homeland Security. He's also one of the federal decision makers who chose to partner with us, and we look forward to hearing his perspective later today. Mr. Bonowell, you're always here by our side, supporting us, whether it's here or on the road, advocating for this particular group from CPS Energy. Also, Ms. Paula Gold-Williams, thank you. I know your team is behind a lot of this effort, and we're excited about the DIAG grant that's going to be utilized to help harden and strengthen our resiliency here in the community. Extremely grateful again to everybody here that's online and here in the room. And with further ado, I'd like to turn it back over to Colonel Stamper and the team as we go forward. Oh.
This time I'd like to introduce President Dr. Taylor Amy. He is the president of UTSA and one of our hosts, and we're just grateful for his support and the partnership we've had with him for well over a year. Sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. It's great to be hanging out with our friends from the Air Force. It's a special day, as you'll hear in a second. This focus on electromagnetic defense is really critical, and the fact that we have a community-based public-private partnership that's comprised of over 70 military, government, academia, research, and commercial organizations is a testament to the importance of this activity. And over the last 18 months, the San Antonio-EMD effort has become the leading effort in the United States to implement the requirements of the Presidential Executive Order 13865, which directs the federal government to help harden infrastructure against EMPs and other events that could cause long-term regional power disruption. This partnership developed 4 lines of effort under a unified strategy to comply with or exceed 13865. Over the last 2 months, multiple initiatives have been selected as national pilot tests, as the General mentioned, by DOE, Department of Homeland Security, and DOD. That's a real interesting outcome of this good work that's been happening. And the fact that the lead activity for the United States is happening here is just a testament to all the talent that's located here. So congratulations. I want to welcome Jim Platt. He's joining us as the DHS CISA Department Lead, Position Navigation and Timing, Electromagnetic Pulse and Space Weather. He's going to be our keynote speaker. I want to give my appreciation to the entire 70 members of this organization that are working on this effort. Thanks for all that you're doing. Thanks to CPS. Fred, thanks for being here. I am also very, very touched and grateful for the relationship that that the NSCC has with Joint Base San Antonio, the largest joint base in the Department of Defense ecosystem. And it's been something that's been very important to our progression as an organization. General Lenderman, I want to give you a big shout out. You were the first of many generals that I met in San Antonio, and so right when I started in September 2017, we crossed paths right away, and you were very kind and welcoming, and I appreciate that very much. And I've followed your career, and you've been a wonderful leader in the Air Force, and I know that you're stepping down in your current role, but you're not going too far away, and let me explain why that's important. The general has a very illustrious career, and I'm going to point out a few things. She is an electrical engineer graduate from Duke University, which means we're fellow engineers. I'm a civil engineer, which puts me lower down in the totem pole about this. Yeah. She flew KC-135s all around the globe, so she's an accomplished pilot. And especially, she has not one, not two, but 3 master's degrees. And so when we think about the fact of her transferring over to work with AETC and staying here in San Antonio, she actually has the opportunity to get a 4th or a 5th master's degree from UTSA or a PhD from UTSA, whatever her preference. And so, Laura, we're very much looking forward to continuing to collaborate with you. We thank you so much for your leadership, and we are appreciative of all that you've done to stand this up and own this and make sure it transitions properly. And I'm sorry I have to depart because I have other things to take care of, but I want you to have a great meeting today and continue this important project. And Guy, I'm grateful to all the work that the NSCC is doing in partnership with this whole effort around EMD, so thank you very much. Laura, I have a little way to recognize you and to say thank you, and I'm socially distancing, passing this off to you. And when you look inside, you'll understand why it's important, because it presages your next degree to some degree. So, very good. All right.
Thank you.
Birds up.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Laura, thank you again. President Amy, thank you again for giving us the opportunity. This is our opening, I'll say, ceremony back with the NSCC since about the 14th of March. For those who can't see it on camera, we have a full house today. Unfortunately, full house is described as 11 people now as opposed to the normal 70 we've actually had within the area here. I just want to say, again, very simply, I'm going to focus on 2 letters, SA, because this is not the NSCC that is hosting this. This is not even JBSA. What I saw after coming here after 5 decades with the Air Force, that this is the city of San Antonio that has embraced this. So all the selections of Joint Base San Antonio, the selections in terms of what the Air Force presence here, of what the military presence in here is absolutely tremendous. So I get to stand here on behalf of our 40-plus partners, government, industry, and academia that are part of the NSCC to say thanks. And recognize that starting from Mayor Ron Nirenberg, who's helped lead this effort, from the Chamber of Commerce, from the Cyber Texas Foundation, from Paula Gold-Williams and Fred Bonwell, who's here with us today, from CPS Energy, SAWS. Really, when it comes together, the selection and the decision by OSD and DoD is really based on that SA in San Antonio. So with that, again, thank you very much for joining us here this morning.
Okay, hi everybody. We've been told the audio is kind of low, so we're trying to work that. In the meantime, we'll go on to continue the presentation. Okay, slide. Okay, what I'd like to do is introduce Colonel Michael Apollo Lovell, as we call him. He's going to go over a couple of admin items prior to the formal presentations.
Good morning, everybody. Just a couple ROE type items here. We do have questions available via text or through the YouTube broadcast. If you have questions, please put them out there. Time permitting, will address the questions. If we don't have enough time to address the questions live, we will follow up individually and for the entire group by publishing a Q&A annex to the slides. The slides will be distributed. Also, if you've got questions about our invitations or email list, please forward your request to be added to Colonel Stamper. His email address is shown, and we'll have that again at the end of the presentation. With that, slide please. So just as a reminder, when you think of Joint Base San Antonio's EDI mission, what our true mission is to ensure Joint Base San Antonio continues military operations in a post-electromagnetic pulse event. What does that mean? Well, we want to create a resiliency model to replicate across DoD. I'm here to tell you this morning that we've got that model in place. You'll see it in a few minutes, and other partners have identified that that model works, and I believe other organizations are picking that model up. We want to build a dissuasion strategy. So when you want to say, hey, our enemy sees this as a soft side, or is it a rigid side? With that in mind, we want a strategy that will prevent EMP as a weapon and build on that dissuasion. And then third, from a 5G standpoint, we're looking at how to bring 5th-gen cellular into San Antonio and Joint Base San Antonio, not only from a risk aspect, but an opportunity. And we think we've got a tremendous opportunity, and we'll talk about that. Bottom line, our mission is a comprehensive approach to not only EMP and geomagnetic disturbances, but physical threats and cyber threats. And that's what we offer the nation here at Joint Base San Antonio. So with that, Thumper, are you going to introduce Mr. Platt?
I would be happy to.
We're proud to have Mr. Platt from DHS CISA, and with that, Colonel Stamper's got a few remarks there.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Platt. He has been very supportive, very engaging, and he is going to be speaking to us on the point of view of a federal partner, which he is one of our federal partners that's selected something we're doing that he's going to be working with us with expertise, and funding, he's going to be speaking to us and just all-around support. So we're really grateful to him, and with that, we're going to turn this over to a WebEx and give us just a second to make the transition. And Jim, you're on. Thank you. It's my pleasure to all-around support. So we're really grateful to him, and with that, we're going to turn this over to a WebEx and give us just a second to make the transition. And Jim, you're on. Thank you. It's my pleasure to all-around support. So we're really grateful to him, and with that, we're going to turn this over to a WebEx and give us just a second to make the transition. And Jim, you're on. Thank you. It's my pleasure to all-around support. So we're really grateful to him, and with that, we're going to turn this over to a WebEx and give us just a second to make the transition. And Jim, you're on. Thank you. And Jim, you're on. Pleasure to all-around support. So we're really grateful to him.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, I'm Jim Platt. I just want to say thank you very much to the team down there in San Antonio for all the great work that they've done. On behalf of the Department of Homeland Security, I just want to thank you not only for your interest in this topic, but more importantly, to all the people in the audience, your willingness to step up and become active participants in securing the homeland. So if we could go to the next slide, please. But more importantly, to all the people in the audience, on March 26th of last year, President Trump signed an executive order to mobilize federal agencies to address the issue of electromagnetic pulse. That order recognized that this effort required cooperation between all levels of government and, more importantly, the private sector. Why do I say more importantly the private sector? It's because 85% of the critical infrastructure within the United States is owned and operated by the private sector. So there's a lot of things that the federal government can do, but we cannot prepare for electromagnetic pulse defense if we don't involve the private sector and have willing participants in that. So as that executive order was signed, there was already efforts in place underway in the Department of Homeland Security to take steps to work on EMP. And you can see the objectives here within our strategy. We had three primary objectives, and you can see them there: improve risk awareness through the electromagnetic threats and hazards, enhance capabilities to protect infrastructure, and then promote effective electromagnetic incident response and recovery. So as you heard from Colonel Lovell, we think these goals are perfectly aligned with what's taking place down in San Antonio. Just the sheer number of participants in this call and the numerous briefings that the JBSA teams have done throughout the country to raise awareness of this is really helping with that goal number one of improving awareness of the electromagnetic threat. So helping spread the word about what's important about EMP and creating an interest to how to manage the associated risk is really the first step, and we're well underway with electromagnetic threat. So once you have people that are aware of the problem, the second goal is enhancing that protection capability. That's really the next logical step. And this is really a difficult step. And why do I say that? It's easy to get people to identify and admire a problem. We see that all the time. had people say, well, we wish we could do something about that, but then nothing gets done. But the team that's been assembled in San Antonio to work on this problem have decided that that's not going to be what takes place. They're actually going to take action, step out and move the ball on this. But the team that's been assembled, this is really a great. Have decided that that's an issue going to be what takes place. They're actually going to take action, step out and move the ball on this. But the team that's been assembled, this is really a great. Have decided that that's an issue going to be what takes place. They're actually going to take action, step out and move the ball on this. But the team that's been assembled, this is really. I'm talking a little feedback, so I'm going to make an adjustment on my computer. They're actually going to take so. This is really. I'm talking a little feedback, so I'm going to make an adjustment on my computer. So, where do we go from here? So, I'm happy to report the numerous. There's numerous people in the coalition and numerous agencies, not just in San Antonio, but all over the country, are taking those first steps to solve this problem. You know, when I first came to the Department of Homeland Security, our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure Protection told me that when we have a big problem, the sooner we take this problem to the private sector, the sooner we get a solution. And so now we've got the private sector involved, and I expect that we're going to see significant progress within the next few weeks, next few months. So, the last goal that we have there is something we don't like to think about. You know, as Colonel Lovell mentioned, everything that we do, we want to try to dissuade our enemies from taking this step of using an EMP against us, but you can never count on that. You always have to be able to respond quickly and recover. And that's why I think the first two steps are also important, because everything that we do in those first two steps serves to dissuade our enemies from taking that step, but just as importantly, should somebody attempt that, if we do our job right in those first two steps, we will be very well prepared to move forward and recover from the event. Should somebody, next slide, please. So here are a few things that DHS and the interagency at the federal level are working on. Well prepared to move forward. As we work to our efforts, we keep in mind that we must use the risk-based approach to mitigating the effects of EMP. Look, we can't protect everything, and if we try to protect everything, we're going to end up protecting nothing. So we have to focus our efforts. We have to identify where the critical nodes are. How can we protect those critical nodes? And how do we get the greatest return on investment for each dollar that we spend on EMP resiliency? When I say return on investment, I'm not just talking about the dollar return on investment. It's about that return on investment for national security, for homeland security, all of those things that are absolutely essential to prepare for and respond to an EMP. So some of the things we're doing, we're validating EMP models for critical assets. We have identified several critical assets that we think are just absolutely essential for continuing through an EMP event. Some of the things we're doing, there's models of those events, and we're actually doing live testing on those facilities to ensure that they can survive an EMP event and then recover quickly. Our Science and Technology Office has released a technology scouting report we'll be releasing within the next month. We're going to make that available on the Homeland Security Information Network, HISN. Within the National Risk Management Center, we've developed a list of 55 national critical functions. This is a way to scope down the things that we need to address and understand the interrelations of the critical infrastructure sector, so that when we start to invest resiliency dollars for EMP, this will give us a guideline of where we should be spending our money. We're kicking off a national risk assessment so that we can have a unified position to invest resiliency dollars for EMP associated with EMP. We're working with interagency collaboration, and then we're also identifying certain things within critical infrastructure that require additional modeling, and we're working with places like the University of Illinois to do those things. So next slide. And then we're also identifying certain things within critical. I apologize. I'm told I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't have my phone on, but we'll try to do those things. So next slide. Kill this. I apologize. I'm told I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't have my phone on, but we'll try to do those things. So next slide. Kill this. I apologize. I'm told I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't have my phone on, but we'll try to. So next slide. Kill this. I apologize. I'm told I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't have my phone on. Colin.
So as we're working through some technical issues, Mr. Platt is at a different location, And one of the neat parts about doing this virtually is the different times that the comms come together nice, you know it and it works, and sometimes they don't. And because of that, unfortunately, we needed to break away from Mr. Platt. But what comes through loud and clear on his message is that DHS-CISA are vested partners with us. They see the whole approach to EMP resilience that we have here in San Antonio. They want to benchmark with us, and they've also agreed to work many of the lines of effort that we're working on. So, Mr. Platt, thank you for being available today. We're sorry that the technical link had some background noise, and it just got to the point we needed to separate from that and clean up the audio. So with that, my engineers are telling me that the audio is improved. If it hasn't, please respond in the chat room, and we'll troubleshoot it immediately. But with that, wanted to get back to the program. Ma'am, just a quick review here. When we talk about San Antonio-Electromagnetic Defense, and we talk about the P4 relationship we have with the community, the slide that's up right now on the left has a patch that shows the EDI symbol, if you will. Above it is what we refer to as our think tank. It's our community partners, our researchers, both in government, in academia, and the research institutions. They're vast and wide, and one that I want to point out is the National Security Collaboration Center. Through that, we're able to also touch the national labs and crowdsource issues when they develop. Much of this has come about because of the relationship we have with CPS Energy. Sir, Mr. Bonywell, without CPS Energy, our Line of One effort would not have the positive feedback that we're getting, and we just attributed that to the wonderful relationship. But the commander's intent is to ensure JBSA will continue ops in a post-EMP environment. We have quarterly meetings. This is a quarterly event. We typically average about 75 people for the face-to-face meetings. Today, I believe we're approaching 170 right now in the window. And we appreciate our out-of-town guests joining us virtually, and it's helping us learn when we get past the COVID protocols and we're back into the public setting meeting face-to-face, we'll also have these virtual pieces for our out-of-town guests to be able to participate. But we have four lines of effort. We have infrastructure, we have fifth-generation cellular, we have a policy and education doctrine line of effort that we call DIMSO, or Domestic Electromagnetic Spectrum Operations. And then we've got a fourth line of effort, which is reconstitution. It's really planning for a long-term power outage, if you will. But each one of these lines of effort has a steering group. The steering groups are very, very active. Without the leadership of the steering groups, I'll tell you, we would never have moved as fast as we have. Our work groups are very active. And on the far right of the screen, you'll see the deliverables that we're working with. For our infrastructure being water, waste, gas, electric, transportation, communications, we want hardened and exercised infrastructure, and that's the goals that we're working towards. On 5th Gen, I'm going to save that for just a little bit later in the presentation, but we want to be an experimentation site for OUSD-RE, and we'll talk about that a little more. In the policy, education, and planning, we want to have playbooks to improve the resiliency of not only our organization, but other organizations in San Antonio, something that can be replicated throughout the nation. And then in the reconstitution line of effort, we want to make sure we've got a long-term regional power outage annex in our emergency plan. So we're moving forward. Our goal is to bake these processes into Joint Base San Antonio and improve our resilience. Next slide. So just wanted to shout out a big thank you. When you talk about what has happened since the COVID protocols came into place, social distancing, teleworking, a lot of flexibility was required. There was a recent article that Lori Bultman from the 502nd Air Base Wing Public Affairs Office put out, and it quoted some of the key leaders that are part of our steering groups. One quote I wanted to point out, Mr. Jody Little with Southwest Research Institute said, "Hey, progress has continued, even accelerated during this pandemic event." And in kind of a weird way, telecommuting has advanced this program in a way that it allowed us to look at it through a different lens. People brought innovation into it, and we've, in many ways, sped up our program. Also, Mr. Fred Bonywell was quoted. He said the team hasn't missed a beat despite all the challenges and that COVID-19 has brought about. So, Mr. Bonywell, thank you, sir. With that, slide. So here's, before we get into the individual lines of effort, here's kind of a holistic approach to how we're looking at resiliency. We call it potato head funding. But if you look at each of the programs that's up here, when they plug together, it gives us a comprehensive answer for resiliency. So item 1 was where Governor Abbott and the Texas Military Preparedness Commission provided a grant to San Antonio to harden the electrical substations that provide power to Joint Base San Antonio. That'll be discussed a little bit more. The second item is where DoD, their senior decision-making team, selected Joint Base San Antonio to be part of the pilot test program in response to Executive Order 13865. The green items that are listed there that continue through the list, those are programs that are developing plans. Partners have agreed in spirit to sponsor those programs, and holistically that will bring the potato head approach, if you can excuse the expression, together for a holistic approach. I want to point out one particular, though. Item 8, the experimentation site. Office Under Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering is looking at 5G experimentation sites for research, test, development, and in that, I believe there will be an announcement later today where OUSD will select the second tranche of 5G sites. We want to pay particular attention to that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. With that, slide, please. And with that, back to Colonel Stamper.
Okay, I get the pleasure of introducing my friend Fred Bonnewell. Fred literally was our first partner in this endeavor, along with CPS Energy. The first night that he and I sat down and just talked about what we were going to try to do with resiliency for San Antonio, we were at a steakhouse in Idaho Falls, Idaho, getting ready to tour the national lab there. And after about 2 hours, he just looked at me and said, well, it's my family too. And that has become the motto of this organization. And with that, I'm going to bring up Fred.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of our President and Chief Executive Officer at CPS Energy, Paula Williams. There's so many things to say, a lot of thank yous. We have such a wonderful relationship with Joint Base San Antonio and General Linderman and your team and Colonel Stamper, Colonel Lovell, and everyone. It's been awesome. This has been a 2-year journey, truly. And General Linderman's announcement this morning did not go unnoticed. To be selected as a national pilot is awesome. This truly is. So it's representative, though, that we have a few folks here in this room that's representative of many in this nation and this city. This is about grid resiliency. This is about our protection. This is about who we are. And when we first started this endeavor, we realized, wouldn't it be neat to build out a cyber corridor between Austin and San Antonio? And we've done that, but we've even put a further stamp on that now. So the stamp on that now is we are the core. We are the nucleus here in San Antonio, and that's truly awesome. And maybe not just for the state, but for the United States as well. So we have a lot to build on, and we have so much to be proud of. We know that it's a matter of national security. We know that it's a matter now of the bulk power system and the protection of that. But in how to do that requires a real foundation. And so that's the neat thing about being involved with UTSA. And my thanks to Guy Walsh and President Anemi have provided a wonderful foundation, a wonderful platform for which to learn, for which to grow, and for which to develop our efforts going forward in this grid hardening project. So we've got a lot yet to do. We've accomplished a lot, though, in this COVID environment, which is almost like we're building the airplane while we're flying it in many ways. Through learning about technology, learning about how to adapt to these meetings. And so it requires a lot of technology. It requires a lot of thought leadership. It requires a lot of ingenuity and tapping into resources that are different for us, but opportunistic. So we've also engaged our epicenter at CPS Energy into this base here around grid hardening This is awesome. This will provide us with a small bit of platform which to build on. I think that'll happen over the next 2 years. We're working on that project. It involves working on the grid, working on some technical aspects at the base. So we're excited about that. We also have civic partners in this as well. So when we're talking about grid hardening, we're talking about the full composite, not just CPS Energy. We're talking about our military partners. We're talking about the city of San Antonio and building on that relationship. We're talking about SAWS. We're talking about VIA. We're talking about all of the aspects of what makes our city great. And so this is about identification of the threat. This is about prevention of the threat. And this is also about recovery of the threat. Those three elements are real key, and they'll be center core to what we have to do going forward. But we're in this all together. So we're going to be united in this effort, and we're going to persevere. We're going to make this happen. This was never, ever thought to be, even from the beginning, that we're just going to do a test run. We always thought this to be a full steam ahead approach, and it's just awesome that we're at this stage right now. So on behalf of our Board of Trustees, our executive leadership team at CPS Energy, Paula Gould-Williams, our President and CEO, I'm thoroughly pleased with where we're at and the stage that we're at this time, and it's exciting. Next slide, I guess. So the hardening project with DEAG involves the substations. It involves hardening of those substations and then the air safety aspects through the transmission lines and protection of those fly zones. This is about the safety, the increase of safety, and the mitigation of risk associated with aircraft incidents. Next slide. As I already spoke about, we have a grant award that's been provided to us and through our military partnership, the Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant, DA grant. It's a $5 million grant over a 2-year period that was awarded here at the first part of May timeframe. We will make certain capital investment in this project as well, so it's an in-kind resolution on our part as well through the support of the grant. Next slide. This definitely will increase the physical security of our facilities, specifically our substations in this phased approach. It will definitely support the JBSA mission success and increase the resiliency and national security both here and be able to provide that regionally as well. And it will provide an economic boost for the city as well. So there's impacted substations. This is about not just the strategic aspects of grid resiliency, but this is also about community resiliency as well at large. Next slide. It's you. So I turn this back over to my friend Thumper.
Thank you. Actually, I didn't tell y'all this part, but we don't really call him Fred. His call sign is Bulldog. And there's a good story for those of you that caught our presentation in November. You understand why. He's a passionate and a great ally. What I want to talk about real quick is the maturity model with what we're doing. We started off with just developing a concept, and that led to the formation of San Antonio-Electromagnetic Defense. And we looked at that mission that Colonel Lovell explained to you, make it possible to continue operations in a post-EMP environment. And we realized it was way more than just keeping the lights on one facility or a few facilities. We have to approach it as a holistic community approach. So that's the concept. We knew that we couldn't do it on our own. We needed technical advice. We needed partnership for funding. We needed a collaborative effort with our federal partners. And you saw the list of projects that we have developed, and several of which are being adopted this year. We think even more in upcoming years. But what has gotten everyone's attention is this community relationship and this community collaboration between the military and all of our partners across multiple agencies, industries, disciplines. And so what happens next? Okay, so the next part, we still have to go through a lot of determinations about specific facilities that are covered under the pilot test. That will lead to vulnerability assessments. In most cases, EMP vulnerability assessments, but there's probably going to be some aspect of cyber. Obviously, we've addressed physical with the DIAG grants, and we're going to be physically hardening key substations that support JBSA and the surrounding civilian communities. After we go through the vulnerability assessments, that will start hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, which ends in September for those of you that aren't government, and go into next year. Then we start figuring out how do you actually address or mitigate the vulnerabilities. And that's going to be each facility, in some cases, each component within the facility will have to have its own solution. What I'm going to say right now, I know a lot of folks are watching that are from companies who do this type of service. We will be looking for help. And we don't know the exact process of how it's going to be selected, but different companies are probably going to be involved in this to do both the vulnerability assessments and to help us determine the mitigations. Then the next step is putting them in place, and then finally we basically retest to see if they worked, and then ultimately that leads to lessons learned that go to the rest of the nation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and move out of infrastructure hardening and go to our 5G team, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Patty Geppert. She's also been with the team from the very beginning. She attended the second EDTF we had at Maxwell Air Force Base, and that has led to a whole nother line of collaboration here. Dr. Geppert.
So I'm Patty Geppert. I'm the Associate Director of Research Development here at UTSA. So as Thumper mentioned, I've been involved with the SA-EMD effort from the beginning, starting back with my visit to Maxwell Air Force Base. And throughout the process, I've been very impressed with the San Antonio ecosystem. It's really driven home the point that there's stuff going on here that probably wouldn't happen in other parts of the country. So I'd like to commend General Linderman for fully and successfully engaging the community in this effort. I'm not sure that that was a requirement, but it made the effort successful. And the San Antonio community will learn from the lessons that JBSA is a test bed for, so we appreciate that effort. I would also like to commend Lieutenant Colonel Stamper for taking the vision and making it a reality. He's a good example of advocacy and the power of advocacy in the community. He's relentless. He should be named Bulldog instead of Thumper. And then lastly, I'd like to thank General Welsh, the Executive Director of the National Security Collaboration Center. So he helped extend the reach of the SA-EMD message to the federal and industry partners that are part of UTSA's National Security Collaboration Center. Next slide. So it's my pleasure to unveil publicly SA-EMD's 5G logo with their new tagline. So we've always had the target with the 5G in the middle, but we've added the tagline, secure and trusted 5G for the warfighter, because that underlies the experimentation protocols for the JBSA test site. So UTSA is proud of their research that they do in 5G security, and we're happy to participate and guide the research that's going on at JBSA. Next slide. I'd like to introduce our steering group. So we have Colonel Mike Apollo, Jody Little from SWERI, Brian Kelly from UTSA, who is the leader in 5G security research. He's not able to be here today, so I'm speaking on his part. And then we have two new members of our steering group since the last quarterly meeting, Larry Strom from AT&T and Bob Tarwater from INL. Bob Tarwater is also a partner in the NSCC. Next slide. Okay, so the 5G working group has a unique vision and mission, because 5G is an emerging technology that's going to be a game changer, both for the military and for the community. So using JBSA as a test bed, we can devise a larger plan for the community. So we're growing together as a 5G experimentation site, both within JBSA and the community. So that underlies the mission and the goals for our 5G working group program. So we want to engage the community in the research that's and planning that's going on in the 5G initiative. We've engaged research, local research institutions, as well as civic partners in that effort. So we're engaging the community and growing with the community as we develop the effort. So we would like to make JBSA and San Antonio as a research and development technology engineering center of gravity in this particular technology. Next slide. So the 5G working group is made up of a steering committee that meets on a weekly basis. And most of our activities within our steering group have been geared and focused on JBSA as an experimentation site. So we've discussed fully and thoroughly the research projects, the capabilities that are here within San Antonio that can be leveraged on JBSA as a test site. There's been a lot of advocacy and discussion with JBSA, with partners in DC to describe and promote JBSA as a experimentation site, and we've had great success in that effort, as Apollo will discuss later on. The working group meets on a monthly basis, and so we've been very active and persistent in our discussions on a monthly basis, except for March, which was delayed, postponed for obvious reasons. We've used those working group meetings to gather success or to gather advocacy for the program and to engage the community further in the 5G effort. As always, we're always looking for new members of our working group. So 5G, DMSO, we welcome new members to participate in that smaller group session to move the efforts forward. Next slide. At this point, I'd like to introduce Colonel Mike Lovell, Apollo, to the stage to talk about the experimentation site. JBSA is an experimentation site.
Thank you, Dr. Gippert. So when we talk about Joint Base San Antonio as an experimentation site, this is a concept. It's a concept that we want to deliver secure and trusted networks for the warfighter. Slide, please. And the concept that we took to Office Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering was a concept that was wrapped around security. We see the strength in San Antonio with such a large presence of SCI cleared members and some of the other large partners that we have at Joint Base San Antonio. It's an ideal fit for us. So right now, today, as we stand, OUSD considers San Antonio a finalist in their Tranche 2 site selection. We were recommended as a primary base of choice for augmented reality support for maintenance and training, and also DoD 5G core sandbox activities. That 5G core sandbox activities is very central to security. Tranche 2 decision is forthcoming. We expect that decision to come out today. Slide, please. And just to give you a little bit of an overview, Tranche 1 selected 4 different bases: Hill Air Force Base, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Naval Base San Diego, and Marine Corps Logistics Base in Albany, Georgia. There was an ad for Nellis Air Force Base afterwards, so there's 5 current bases. And slide, please. The concept that we've been working on this since about last fall. We first approached Office Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering with our concept of what we believe the strengths of San Antonio and JBSA have to offer. And we received a very warm feedback. They saw those strengths as something that adds value immediately. So through the fall into the spring, we refined those concepts, redrafted it, refined it, and focused it, and we were vetted through the Air Force Chief Technology Officer and the Air Force's highly qualified subject matter expert for 5G. A week ago, we were informed we were a finalist on this Tranche 2 selection. And slide, please. We believe that that decision is forthcoming. The experimentation package that we put forward really leverages secure and trusted 5G networks for the warfighter. That top-level theme is throughout more than 5 technical areas that we submitted for 23 different experimentation sites. But when you think of 5G, low latency, high speed, the communication across those networks is imperative to the warfighter, and that's what our experiments will propose. Slide, please. The next steps. We expect OUSD to make an announcement today at 3:45 Eastern on 5G testing and experimentation locations. I'd encourage you to look for those press releases. Secondly, JBSA was recommended for those 2 areas, augmented reality and DoD 5G core sandbox experimentation. If we're selected for those 2 activities, we expect OUSD will probably come out and do a visit at JBSA to evaluate our facilities, our capabilities, our community commitment to 5G development, and then this true scope and scale that will potentially be invested here. Slide, please. So one of our key members on the 5G team is Mr. Jody Little. He's a Yogi fan, and he suggested we close 5G with this, and what a better way to do it. We have a good time together, even when we're not together, and in this virtual environment, levity is amazing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it, slide please, to Dr. Gippard, and she'll pick us back up on our policy, doctrine, and education theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Apollo. Okay, so I'm going to give you a short overview of what Line of Effort 3 has accomplished in the past quarter. So next slide. DMSO is a term that we coined for domestic EMSO, electromagnetic spectrum operations. So if you're a part of the military, you know a lot about electromagnetic spectrum operations and electronic warfare, both the offensive and defensive sides of that coin. But as the community, that's something that's relatively new to us. And as a community becomes more connected, especially with emerging 5G community or 5G technology, we become even more vulnerable to the effects of EMP and solar GMD. So a large part of our group is to devise policy and education plans for the domestic community in electromagnetic spectrums. So to protect, they're defensive, to protect and encourage recovery after electromagnetic events. Underlying, next slide please. And so that's basically what this slide is showing. It's a nice graphic showing the military side and then the domestic side. So electromagnetic spectrum, now a part of our life, commerce and business, we use it extensively, as well as every other part of our life for all of you that are watching here, as well as on your phones and iPads and such. So maintaining that comfort level, even in the face of an EMP event or a solar GMD event, it underlies the mission and goals of our working group. You'll see at the bottom of that graphic, position, navigation, and timing. That underlies the entire DMSO, EMSO spectrum. And so ensuring position, navigation, and timing resilience is also a very important part of this working group. Next slide. Okay, so we have lots of missions and goals. A lot of our work is to use San Antonio as a framework and a test bed for education and policy, and use those models, the work that comes out of San Antonio as a model and template that can be exported to other regions, local, national, state regions, for them to use. So EMD is a relatively new field, and so there's not a lot of policy and education that has been developed specifically for EMD awareness, planning, preparedness, recovery, and resilience. And so part of a lot of our work goes into evaluating the policies that are currently available, doing a gap analysis, and Tech Sergeant Blanche Dudois will be talking about the extensive work that she's done in that area, and then taking that information and evaluating what education curriculum needs to be developed in order to meet those policy goals. And so that is another gap analysis. And so our group has been very busy over the last year looking at policy and education. At the end, our final goal is to be able to produce a playbook, and we'll talk more about that playbook. And that playbook contains the templates that can be exported to other regions for their use. Next slide. I'd like to introduce the steering committee. I've been a part of the steering committee from the beginning, as well as Jody Little, who has been a driving force in organizing and managing the steering group. So without his efforts, I'm not sure that we would have come as far as we have. Of course, Apollo, Colonel Mike Lovell, Tech Sergeant Blanche Dudois, who's done a lot of the policy work, as well as an extensive experience in emergency management, and then Lieutenant Colonel Jay Davis. We've added executive advisors to our group, Tim Carty from EMP Shield, Tin Mung from CACI, as well as Henry Newton from InfraGard. One of the nice things about working virtually is that it allows us to get expertise from around the country. So Tim Carty is working in the Kansas City regions. Henry Newton is joining us from Louisiana, from New Orleans. And so we're always happy to bring individuals in with their depth of expertise to help with our engagement. Next slide, please. So we've had a number of milestones since we've started, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but a lot of them have to do with awareness, bringing the work and lines of effort of this group to the public. And so we've had a lot of public engagements to describe our unique community effort, and it's been well received. One that I want to point out is a presentation that our group did at INL's Resilience Week, which is an annual conference. Last November it was held in San Antonio, and we drew a large crowd of community members to hear a discussion on EMP resilience, which was a topic that hadn't really been covered in a Resilience Week in the past. And part of the effort of that conference is to bring together scientists and community, and I think that we've shown very strongly that that's what we've done with this effort in San Antonio. Ongoing projects, we are working with Jack Voltaic, the Jack Voltaic project to run some tabletop exercises, as well as other exercises from DHS and DOE for black start and long-term power outage. So we'll be discussing some of those more in depth. As I mentioned, one of the final product that this group wanted to produce was a playbook that could act as a template that could be exported. And so initially that playbook was going to be in written form in a physical playbook, and we had a deadline of April 30th for that, but due to many complications, none the least of which is COVID, but due to the complexity of policy and education and bringing all that information together, we've pushed that back a little bit, and we've changed the format of the playbook. So Tech Sergeant Dudois will be talking about that as we go, and in fact, she'll be talking about it right up next. We're going to use that playbook and present it to CISA. That we're looking at the fall of 2020, but that's to be determined. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Tech Sergeant Blanche Dudois, and she will be talking about the playbook as well as policy and education.
Thank you, Dr. Geppert. Tech Sergeant Dudois, and I'll be talking about the playbook. Slide, please. So as far as the policy, as we're going through and looking at what exists with doctrine, policy, and education, we found that there's large amounts of information out there. There are also very complex relationships, and it makes it difficult for users to comb through the information in a useful manner. So because of this, our team decided to convert the playbook into a digital format, which would be a group of related PDFs. This will allow the reader to go through and comb through their roles and responsibilities and target specific critical infrastructure sectors, as well as preparedness mission areas and EMD levels. It'll also have multiple entry points, and it'll have different navigation paths. Slide, please. As far as the policy catalog, we have 3 members who are going through and populating the classifications. We're tracking currently over 330 policies, and we're looking at what classifications they fall at. So for the levels, whether they're federal or national, they're at a regional level, state level, local, or owner and operator level. The preparedness mission areas are mitigation, prevention, protection, response, and recovery, and which policies affect one or more of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors that are identified in the Presidential Policy Directive 21. Slide, please. This is a general overview of some authorities that affect energy at the different levels. As you can see, it's broken down by functional areas such as generation, transmission, distribution, and consumption. If the generation is from a nuclear reactor, it would fall under the nuclear sector and would be regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the NRC. If the energy comes from hydroelectricity, it would fall under the dam sector, and for coal and natural gas, that'll be under the energy sector. Slide, please. All right, so risk management is a topic that we are going to add to the playbook. As you see risk management throughout the field, FEMA has developed it in regards to emergency preparedness. There's cyber risk management. What we want to do is focus on EMD risk management. And we're looking to develop the framework to assess and mitigate the risk associated with EMD. Slide, please. For DEMSO education, Dr. Geppert did a great job of looking and creating gap analysis on what exists out there. We're focusing on 3 different levels of education. There's an awareness level, a preparedness and planning level, as well as resilience and recovery. There's information that exists out there regarding all hazards, as well as long-term power outage training, and also some equipment hardening, but we're looking to bridge those gaps. Slide, please. This is a gap analysis. As you can see, FEMA has at ready.gov some space weather information, all hazards information, as well as outage information. Nothing specific to just EMP or GMDs, and we are looking at the local, state, and federal levels, as well as the critical infrastructure sectors. Slide, please. And back to Yogi Berra, thanks to Jody Little. There you have it. And that's all we have for DEMSO. Slide, please. And I will be discussing line of effort 4, which is recovery and reconstitution. Slide. It's planning for long-term regional power outage. Slide, please. So this past quarter, a lot of our emergency management have been fully engaged with the COVID-19 response, and because of that, we've had to postpone our early May tabletop exercise to late August. This exercise is between JBSA and the city of San Antonio, and we'll be focusing on a 2-week power outage. Again, it's a tabletop, and that will then inform our JBSA-EMP specific response plan. Later on in the month, we have our team will be teaming up with the Army Cyber Institute, as well as the San Antonio Office of Emergency Management, to look at ways that we can use a visualization tool to view critical infrastructure readiness. We'll also be virtually observing the Army Cyber Institute's mini tabletop exercises for Charleston and Savannah on the 23rd of June, as well as the 30th of June. On September 1st through the end of October, there will be an EarthX held through the EIS Council. It is open to all organizations, all nations. Anyone can participate. It's come as you are exercise. To find more information, if you type EarthX into Google, you'll pull it up. It is available for that approximately 60-day period, and it's testing everyone on all hazards, emergency to catastrophic events. For 21 September, we'll also be observing a Jack Voltaic 3.0 exercise. Should be approximately 3 or 4 days long. Slide, please. And that's all I have. Next, I'll turn it over to Colonel Stamper. Thank you.
We do have time for 2 questions.
Okay, we've got time for a couple of questions. First of all, thank you, Sergeant Dudois and Dr. Geppert. By the way, Sergeant Dudois is also known as Touche around our world, and if you hang around with her, you'll figure it out. Couple things. Okay, couple things. As far as questions, we had several questions that honestly get into some pretty technical discussions, and we're going to address those offline. One of the things we're going to do, it'll probably be in the next week because we've got quite a few follow-ups to do, but we're going to create a Q&A annex that's going to be part of the after-action email that we always send out with a copy of the slides. So you will be getting that. One question that we did have is about 5G and the level of experiments and what type of experiments we're going to be doing. A lot of that depends on the specific roles that we are chosen to do by OUSD, and we'll find out later about that today. So we will be able to follow up probably on our next quarterly meeting in a few months. On that note, DIMSO is the group that briefed just a little while ago. Both DIMSO and 5G will be having their next work group meeting on 1 July. If that's something that you're interested in participating with, we already have a lot of folks that are added on that list. But if you want to be part of that work group, if you'll let one of us know, we will get you added to the list and you'll get the emails. The next quarterly meeting is, and we're projecting this because a lot of things are still in flux, the next quarterly meeting will be in August, possibly early September, and you'll be notified well ahead. Okay, I want to address a couple things with our email list. We sent out about 290 some emails for this with the invitation to this meeting, and it went out to almost 600 between all the folks that were copied and sent messages. If this is your first time with us, and if you didn't get the invite from me personally last Wednesday, May 27th, you're probably not on our master list, our EMD list. If you would like to be, please let me know. My email's included, and just let me know. We'll add you to the list. In fact, you can let any of our working group members know, and we'll get you on the list. Specifically, if you would like to be part of the 4 working groups, infrastructures, 5G opportunities, DIMSO, or recovery and reconstitution, let us know, and we will add you to a specific breakout list that gets emails for those specific work groups. Does anyone else have a question that needs to be answered that you've gotten from one of our members or participants? Okay, we are running out of time, so let's press on to the next slide, please. Most of you that got the invitation to this, you heard of something we're wanting to do. We've never done this before, like a lot of things today. But what we're going to do is, since we can't obviously do the kind of networking where we just get to meet, greet, and talk, we've set up a couple of WebEx rooms. One is called the infrastructure room, and that's going to have CPS Energy, Epicenter, which is a technology accelerator associated with CPS Energy and some other energy companies, and the San Antonio water system. And you can see the WebEx room ID. We're going to leave that up after the meeting. And then there's going to be, we're calling it the government room, but that's going to be the National Security Collaboration Center here at UTSA, along with representatives from our team, JBSA-Electromagnetic Defense Initiative, and JBSA Civil Engineering. The intent of this is just like it would be if we were all in a big room together with a couple hundred of us, walking around, meeting each other, making connections, and possibly setting up future deep dives into conversations. What I would ask for all of you that are solution providers, inventors, recognize that you're in an open room with a lot of people. Make your connection, and let's see where we can go from there, but try not to dominate the conversation, and I'm just being nice about it. So we really appreciate you participating. At our top end, we had about 180 folks logged in on this. So what will happen after is we will be locking this down. The video is going to be locked down, and we will send out a private link to those that are on our email list or those who had it forwarded to them. With that, I think, Colonel Lowell, would you like to say a few words on behalf of General Linderman?
Slide, please. Well, on behalf of Brigadier General Linderman, I want to express our extreme gratitude to each and every participant today. To have 180 participants virtually, 11 in this room, massive undertaking, and I want to shout out our PA engineers that are in the back of the room. They troubleshot, got us back up and running, and connected this virtual event in a magnificent way. Dr. Amy was here earlier. UTSA's partnership with us is tremendous. We're so appreciative of that. General Walsh, National Security Collaboration Center, you took us on as your #1 R&D project when you joined this team back in the spring. And I'll tell you, that was a propelling moment that energized us and helped us connect with the community in a way that words just don't express. I want to thank you personally for that and on behalf of General Lunderman. Mr. Platt was wired into us earlier. He was our guest speaker. His message came through loud and clear that DHS and CISA are partners with us in this venture, and we are so appreciative of that. But more than that, the volunteers throughout the city. When we say Military City USA, if you're not part of San Antonio, sometimes it doesn't really translate, but when you're here, you feel it. The city support for the Joint Base San Antonio is tremendous. We get support from government, academia, research, industry, and then our virtual partners that are with us through this event today. On behalf of General Linderman, I want to say thank you. I do believe today was a success. I ask you to continue to stay safe during this pandemic, and we genuinely appreciate your support. With that, slide please. Just want to highlight the WebEx rooms that will go hot in about 15 minutes. But other than that, are there any comments or questions from the floor? How long are those rooms going to stay open?
They're going to have to close the room in a few minutes because they have another engagement.
So the post-event, the speed networking rooms, how long will those rooms be open?
We're going to, let me jump in. Hi everybody. We're going to turn on the WebEx rooms as soon as we can. We will go live at 9:45, so in a little over 15 minutes. And we're going to keep them open as long as we have activity going on or lunch, whichever comes first. Thank you. And with that, I think we can close this session. Thank you all for the help. We understand the technical difficulties. We tried to do something new. And Jim Platt, thank you for being a trooper and helping us out. We've got your slides. The audio is readable, but it's a little difficult because of all the loops. And we'll work that for the next time. This is clearly an avenue that works for us. And for all I know, maybe even when we're able to go back to live, we'll still continue some type of a virtual aspect to SA-EMD in the future. Thank you for all your support, your help, and your comments. And we will do everything we can to get the questions out to you as soon as we can, along with the copy of all these slides. With that, I think we're ready to go to, or we'll keep this slide open for just a few minutes, and then we're going to have to shut everything down, and we'll meet you on the WebEx rooms. Thank you.